Hey, bubbling, coming in, crushing this art. All right, I wanted to come to you guys, talk a little bit about elements, planetary rulerships, um, and yeah, let's just start with that. So, the way that I think about water and fire is being more tied to things that we take with us longer, things that are less concrete, I guess is a better way to put it, are more volatile, are more higher, right? Are more closely like associated with things that we'd call like mystical, like spirit or like soul, right? Like soul being those feelings that you soak in, those things that you've attached to, those the people like not everything humans do makes sense, right? Like that's a perfect example. Like soul being those things that you've attached to, those reasons, those things that you love, those the comfort, right? The things that you just want to be around, right? Like these things that you like identify with, like the taste that you're gonna have, right? Like you're gonna have certain tastes in a way. Like these all associate with what is your soul. You know what I mean? So now, if we look at fire, this is more. I feel like even higher in a way. This is like bringing new. This is almost like testing your soul, putting it through a bunch of and bringing new stuff into it, almost like experimenting with it in a way, like stirring it, putting it in new lanes, throwing it to the wolves, I guess. So that's like fire versus water, but they're both like the most like fluid and volatile of the elements, right? Let's think about like even just the planetary rulerships, right? If we think about Mars, Leo, and Sag, these are all fire. We have Mars ruling Aries, we have Sun ruling Leo, and then we have Jupiter ruling Sagittarius. So we have just Mars, Sun, Jupiter, right? And then if we go to water, we have Cancer, Moon, Scorpio, Mars, Pisces, or Jupiter. So so we have the moon and the sun ruling fire and water already, are being a part of that, right? And then we also have Jupiter and Mars being a part of that on both sides. Mars having a fire and water sign, Jupiter having a fire and water sign. Jupiter being the more mutable, right? Ruling both mutable signs, and Mars being the more trying to initiate something or stick with something. Um, yeah, and then the moon having a connection with the cardinality too versus the sun having a connection with the fixed. So they are both like not the mutable ones too, right? They're more bringing into being what you want or yeah, and like sticking with what you want, right? So straight up, we have the sun and the moon, we have Mars and Jupiter. All right. So now if we look at the earth signs, we have the earth and the air, right? So earth, Taurus, Venus, Virgo, Mercury, Capricorn, Saturn. Uh, and then Gemini, air. Start with air. Gemini, Mercury. Um, Libra, Venus. Aquarius, Saturn. So we have Mercury, Venus, and Saturn, right? So straight up, we can look at the tree of life, right? We see that Mars, Sun, Jupiter are all in the top half, right? With the fire and the water, the more volatile, right? And then we have Mercury, Venus, right down here, and the more earthly, right? We have Saturn up here, pertaining to the balance part, right? Above even what is real, right? So this is like your particular form of stability up here, and then the sun and the moon being your stability as well. How you gain structure, right? They're in the middle, the balance, and then we have the earth, the bottom balance, the top, the spirit balance, and then we have the yang and the yin, top side and bottom side. We have Mars and Jupiter, top side, Mercury, Venus, bottom side, right? And then down here, Earth, we have balance. Up here, outer planets, we have balance as well. when it comes back to the spirit and breaking that off. Yeah. So anyway. So just thinking more about the elements. So Mars relates to fire in a huge way, I feel like, because fire is like the future of the future, whereas like we have air, which is like the future of the present. So what do I mean by that? So air, the future of the present, thinking about with what you have, right? Thinking about with what is, working with practicality, working with logic, working with sense, and developing new. You're still stirring. It's still sort of a yang thing in a way. Like fire and air are both very like stirring, right? Whereas we have earth and water are both very receptive. So okay. So yes. So now yes. Fire being future, like there's no words for what fire is bringing in, right? It's a whole new lane. That's why it associates with spirit, with individuality, with that. And so in order to bring your vision down, your uniqueness down, you have to take a bunch of steps. First, you have to realize this. First, you have to soak in it long enough to where you even understand the vibe. And then once you understand the vibe, you can start to develop ideas, and then you can start to take steps in order to realize that, right? That's fire, the vision, the uniqueness, the spirit, the individuality. Then that's water, the vibe, soaking in that, doing what you can to create a bubble, enough soul food to where you can actually manifest into a solid vibe, to where you can have logics, to where you can develop from there, right? Then the air, instead of the fire bringing in the new, you have the air bringing in the present new, to where like you're soaking in that present, you've had enough soul food to really soak in that, and you can stir and generate off of that instead of generate top down out of spirit, you know? Okay, so that is like fire versus air generating out of spirit, right? Fire, and then air generating out of vibe, right? That's air. So, okay. So now if we have water versus earth, we have water, which comes back into like the battery, the moon, right? Like the actual soul, what you soak in, the vibe. And we have that ruled by Jupiter, Mars, and the moon, right? So Jupiter being the mutable element, like going with the flow, the thing that's going to receive all these experiences and figure out, okay, like, what do I make of this in a way? And then Mars, the actual intent, the magic that you're doing to program the water in a way, like the Scorpio, like what do you obsess over? Where do you keep your interests at? You know, where's your mind at when no one else knows quite why you're at the party? You know what I mean? So that's like water is the receptive battery, right? That cardinally is the moon, right? Has to do with our soul. And then fixed wise is what we obsess over. It goes to what intent, how we're programming the battery. And then mutably, Jupiter is how we take in all these experiences, like the knowledge that we take forth from it, how we're going to set up our faith, the experiences we just got sucked up into that made us develop safeguards versus what we do and do not associate with, right? So we have Mars, the yang side, I'm the programming of this, and then we have Jupiter, like the yin side too, like I am receiving what's known from the fire and the water, from my visions, from all these ideas that I've got lost in, and I'm holding that, right? I'm gonna, like, Jupiter is the one that's gonna put you in scenarios through fire and water, through your uniqueness and originality and the things that you just get caught up into that may not make sense, and also the emotional experiences too, the things that you get sucked up into, that you put a lot of dreams, that you put a lot of yourself, your soul, like you've really associated with it, and then got burnt because that wasn't the right thing. This is gonna set you up to learn lessons right here. So this is like where you're coming from, all the lessons you've learned, all the experience you've had, Jupiter, into how the yang, because Jupiter is the yin side, the yang side, how we're going to program that water, right? And then Jupiter takes it in at the end and receives that. Okay, so that's the water, like the battery, right? Okay. All right. So now if we go to Earth, this is like straight up past, right? So even if you're an Earth person generating new things, right? We have Capricorn, right? Ruled by Saturn. You're not looking to do things that may not hold up. You're looking for things that you can develop and then rely on, right? Ruled by Saturn, that are a part of how you gain balance, right? In the balance part, right here, associated with like Earth and how you particularly gain structure and balance, right? So Earth, yeah, the best way to put it, the solid things, right? The things that you can come back to, the things that you can fall back on, versus like, and it's the things that will break before they'll change. Whereas water, right, the battery can be programmed with the Mars, or yeah, with our intent, right? The Earth, you'd have to create a whole new Earth before you're gonna change that, right? It's either gonna do its job or it's gonna break, but it's not relying on the present at all. It's relying on the past and what was made and what that structure is, right? So Earth, past, and then water, past, present, right? It's holding the past but bringing that to the present. The Earth is holding the past, keeping it in the past, holding form, right? Fire, future, bringing in new from spirit, right? A whole new lane, a whole new thing that doesn't even have a vibe yet, right? And then we have air, which is the present future. It's working from the present, what's here, right? In order to generate, in order to look to the future, right? So anyway, that's a little bit about elements. And I think that's all I have to say. So if we think about, I guess, exaltations too, we have Jupiter exalting in Cancer, which is cardinal water, right? Which is the energy that if you're trying to get enough soul food to where you can actually soak in a vibe, to where you can generate ideas and art off of that, right? That's that sort of energy. So Jupiter exalts in Cancer, like it makes sense because you're bringing all that faith, all that experience you previously had, getting lost and sucked up into things, right? The mutable fire and the mutable water, Sagittarius and Pisces, into the experiences into how you're going to develop this next soul, right? So that's Jupiter exalting in Cancer. And then we have Mars exalting in Capricorn. And we see that Capricorn and Cancer are opposite to each other, right? We see that. So this is like the yin, the water, to this yang, the Mars, the earth, in a way, when they come to exaltations. So Mars into that, bringing the passion into something true, comes in again once you actually have this idea and you have to develop that into an earth. So originally you have this spark, right? You have this dream, you have this vision, you have this individuality, you have this this thing that hasn't even really been you haven't collected enough things to really make it a vibe yet, but you just have it, right? And you can work from there. That's Mars. So then once you get to the point where you have enough soul food and you have this idea, right? Like you've started generating ideas on how you can start to take steps. That's where stuff changes. That's where it becomes the difference between two buddies just sitting, talking about having a dream, and then actually getting to the grind, right? That's where the intent and willpower comes to exalting in Capricorn and Earth and developing it into realism, but also because that's like another spark, another driving force, just like the original spark that got it down in the first place, right? Whereas when you're just sitting with the idea, cardinal air, once you have enough of that soul food to start thinking about it, this is Venus. This is still sitting with what's light and airy to where you're still just dreaming, right? You don't, so yeah. So anyway, so that's the yin, Jupiter being where you're coming from in a way, and like how you're going to set up this next soul. And then you have Mars, yang, like the willpower, like the ways that you've learned to get around and manipulate, exert your will in order to bring either that down from spirit or then bring that from idea to earth, right? Okay. So that is Jupiter and Mars. So then if we go to Venus and Mercury exaltation. So here's what I think straight up that we need to talk about. What do we have right now? what are we at? Will this say 14, 15? Yeah, okay. So, straight up, we have, so I think that Mercury exalts in Virgo, and it falls in Pisces, and Venus exalts in Pisces and falls in Virgo. Why do I think this? Okay. So we just saw with the exaltations with Mars and Jupiter, they're directly opposite. Mars in Cancer, Jupiter in, Jupiter in Cancer, Mars in Capricorn, directly opposite on the solstices, correct? Yes. So, if we look down here, it's a similar fashion if we put Mercury in Virgo and Venus in Pisces. It's the same deal. There's the same opposition. Right before the fall and then right before spring, right? Whereas this Jupiter and Cancer would be on the solstice, right before or right at the summer solstice, right at the winter solstice. So, or summer solstice, winter solstice. And then we'd have Venus being right before spring and then right before fall. Anyway, yeah. Pisces, Virgo. So, anyway, it just makes sense with the symmetry, right? But I do see how people say Mercury could exalt in Aquarius. I get this too, because if we have, look, hold on, let me move you guys over for a second. Okay, let's see if we can do this. Hold on. Okay, we can see. All right. So we have the Sun exalting in Aries, Sun, Aries, the Moon in Taurus, Jupiter in Cancer, Mercury in Virgo, Saturn in Libra, Mars in Capricorn, Venus in Pisces. So now it's easier to see. Look, they're right across from each other. Jupiter in Capricorn, Mercury in Virgo, and I said Jupiter in Capricorn. Man, I'm nuts. Look, okay, so if we just look at this, right? We see that I do think that Mercury would make sense in Aquarius. Why? Why do I think it would also make sense in Aquarius? Because we see it trining its home, right, of Gemini, which we see Saturn doing, right? We see Saturn trining its home. Jupiter has a sextile to its home, or Mars has a sextile to its home, right? The Sun has a trine to its home, right? Moon has a sextile to its home, right? So it seems like it would fit in that pattern, right? And also, I do like, if you think about Mercury in Aquarius, what I like about this is that it stays next to the Sun and the Moon. Whereas, look, we look at the exaltations, we have the Sun here. We have the Sun and the Moon right here, and Mercury and Venus are right next to them, right? Right here, like in that top half of the chart. So yeah, so it would make sense if it was kind of close to the Sun and the Moon. I see this, but also, it also seems like it's the farthest away from Mercury's ballpark, too. Because in Mercury in Virgo, this is Earth Mercury, right? This isn't Mercury that is as free as it wants to be. And Mercury wants to be as free as possible. Like, this is why it rules the two mutable signs like Sag, or like Jupiter, I mean. Because it's like the fastest of the planets, right? Like, this is why it associates with air so much in communication, because it is the fastest. It's just that. So I see in Gemini and in Aquarius, it's almost like it's working with what it's comfortable with. But at the same time, it does rule Virgo. So then you never know. But it does feel like maybe there could be more art type of energy with Mercury in Virgo. And then, yeah, like I was talking about how Mercury and then Venus would have this separation, just like Jupiter and Mars. And I do think that that makes sense. Let me explain. So, let me put this back. Okay, are we good? All right, we're good. So, yeah, so if you think about Venus ruling Earth and air in a way, but it rules air in that it rules Libra, it wants to figure out how to support what it loves, right? And then it rules Earth being Taurus, the things that you've got lost in the light about, like the things that you don't want to let go of, right? So that's Venus. And so then we look at Mercury, this rules Gemini, just like frolicky communication, and then Virgo, figuring out how to, just figuring out how things work, right? Like the mutable, the practicality, like the oversight, like what is logic, like what is sense, right? Okay. So it's almost like how you're coming about what you learn, how you're communicating. These are all sort of coming from your faith in a way. Like you're not going to communicate pro a different side unless like you really like your faith is still up in the air, right? Which you could do, right? But then it would still be that your faith is up in the air, so your communication comes out in all sorts of different ways, right? So it's in a way it's like your communication is held back by what you truly resonate with, right? And that's like the how Jupiter expresses itself in Mercury. And then how Mars expresses itself in Venus. We have what you're intensely passionate about, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, right? That's going to have a direct correlation, but it's like the yang, the willpower, the drive with what you actually find beautiful, with the objects of that passion, right? So it's like your way of communicating, relating, Mercury, is like the object or the form that you can express your individuality and faith through. And then what actually looks attractive to you is the form, the way, the shape that is of your passions. You know what I mean? So yeah. So then that's how these express themselves in each other, right? And then it's like the yang and yin side of passions, right? So we have the Mercury, the stirrer, the one that's going to get you to be thinking, the one that's going to get you to be finding new ways, the one that's going to get you to like looking, assessing, right? Analyzing. And then we have Venus, the one that's going to be like directing you towards like what to look at, right? Like what's pretty, what to think about, right? In a way. It's still like what's beautiful. Just like like it's like another kind of way of Jupiter, like Jupiter's faith, what you resonate with, and then Venus is like the whoa, like there it is, like embodied, and then Mars, like intent, willpower, like what you're going after, and like how you're going after, and bringing in the new, like the changing it up, is like communicating and just assessing and figure things out is another way to be liberal, right? So it's like Mars and Mercury are like liberal in a way. They're stirrers like earth and air, whereas Jupiter and Venus, water and earth, are more like are more mem, are more like conservative, I guess. So anyway, that's kind of a little bit about the elements, a little bit about exaltations, a little bit about just elements, exaltations, planetary rulerships, all the above. Bubbling, coming in, crushing this art.